a big thing with that then is once I discovered that and got involved in that movement, before that, I felt kind of defeated and powerless to do anything about these things I cared about. Once I discovered permaculture, I saw that there were all these people who were taking responsibility over doing exactly that.
Yeah.
And all of that stuff that I wanted when I was a kid, the connection with nature, healthier food, became possible with a lot less work, and it made a lot more sense economically. And it solved all those things for me. And now I feel like I can, permaculture has given me my life back in that way. I get to have those things that I wanted. I get to feel like I'm participating in solutions in a positive way. And it's just been a really great thing for me. 20 years on, I'm still as optimistic about it as I was back then.
More recently, I would say it's impacted me on more of a philosophical level and even a spiritual level. And I think there's a quote from Holmgren in his book somewhere where it's something like, I resonated with it, where like the longer you're involved with permaculture, it becomes harder to avoid bringing a spiritual component into it. It's like you sit with the trees long enough and it's like, woo, okay, like there's some connection here, there's something deeper here. And maybe in the last 5 or 6 years, I've been able to find kind of a beautiful merging relationship with my spiritual practices and my professional work as a permaculture designer. And I've been surprised at how beautifully those have fallen into place together.
Oh, it has impacted it so positively because it's gotten me to think so much more holistically. Like, a big part of what I bring into my money and lifestyle coaching is this idea, and we'll touch on it a little more in my presentation, of the 8 forms of capital, of multiple forms of capital, of this more holistic wealth portfolio. Because certainly financial capital is a part of it, but the resilience comes from that holistic balance sheet. And so it's really expanded my way of thinking in so many areas, even retirement planning. And I think that's something we don't talk enough about in permaculture. What is permaculture retirement planning? How does that look? But I'm trying to weave permaculture and retirement planning a little more in my life. And it's just enriched my relationships because they've become much more intentional.
It's really been a Patty changing experience, and it has literally changed my mind. I approach problem solving with a much different point of view, having all the permaculture principles and ethics. Also, I think, I was a single mother a bunch of my son's early life, and it really helped me feel more solid in being able to provide for the two of us.
I think as far as impact, it didn't really have an impact until I was desperate. Like I thought I really understood it until, I was broke, I was homeless, I was, and then it really was, like pulling myself up from my bootstraps. And I came up with a lot of these ideas that, that pretty much the presentation is like an outline of the direction of the book that I'm going. It's sort of, how would we start from nothing? Or, and it has come in handy in terms of, aid work and, doing, programs where natural disasters and different places that we've been to and, tried to help out and just using permaculture design we're already way ahead of a lot of the other organizations, but I really have tried to put a framework together, and that's kind of the impact that it had was directly on my life. It kind of changed everything for me.
I would say that for the past, it's been 25 years of practice, I would say it is life. Walking through the world as a member of the ecosystem and being in a set of reciprocal relationships, the kind that permaculture principles teach us. I would say that when you marinate and sort of immerse yourself in the principles, you remember with a kind of nature that you are, and that you're part of this web. And so it's every facet of life, from my personal and spiritual way of being to a sense of belief in regeneration, a belief, some might say hope, but I would say belief that things can be better, that we can heal broken systems, that we can heal watershed and soil and culture. And that belief directly comes from the implementation of permaculture on the land, and to see how a land responds to an approach that is reverent and reciprocal and implements, all the kinds of techniques that we find in permaculture. So for me, it's impacted me on all levels of life.
I think that again, it's that providing a central theme. Just as when one creates a presentation, you choose a style or an overarching pattern, and to have that in one's life allows you to move more freely, more confidently. You know why something feels right. We all have that intuition and gut instinct of how to accomplish things, looking at plants, what are they telling us? But when you learn permaculture, you learn the how and the why and what's behind that. And so it really does give you a really nice platform from which to operate and to speak more confidently to others. Talk to other people about, meet them where they're at, but be able to explain or share information and stories that helps them to understand their environment.
It has impacted everything in actuality, and I'll be sharing a little bit about my journey of getting to where I am currently. Though I think that in the beginning, when I learned about it, the understanding of every decision I make and how that reflects on my work and my life, and the idea of moving forward with a pattern of recognition of the ways that I can make my choices that is a little less harmful to the planet. And that's been really helpful for me. And also, it's been helpful in guiding my relationships with others as well, my family, my friends. And so, yeah, it's the best thing that came along in my life besides, well, a few other things.
It was always a trying to live in right relation to nature. And I didn't even know that type of terminology, right relation to nature. In the beginning, I was always up in the canyons. When I first got my desk job, I got so depressed because all I was doing, I was a ski coach during winters, during school, during college. And I was a landscaper during the summers and springs and whenever I wasn't skiing. So I was always outdoors, and I felt really connected to nature. And then when I started doing marketing and got the desk job, I got so stinking depressed for those first couple of years. I didn't even know what to do with myself. And so when I found permaculture, it was like all of these systems, I can build systems, design systems in my space that allow me to live in right relationship and to feel always connected, not apart from nature. Yeah. And so that's really what has resonated with me all these years.
Yeah, so I believe permaculture can be a solution to many of our world's problems, just like a lot of us permaculturists. And I like to think about permaculture as a philosophy that we can integrate into our gardens, into our communities, into our businesses. And it's really made me look through the lens of permaculture when I make decision making and how I just live in this regenerative way. And permaculture is that those ethics and the principles are something that we're living and breathing as we go through our life.
Completely.
Yeah.
In every way, I've changed my entire life because I've been introduced to permaculture. It's a complete viewpoint shift, worldview shift, and different way of living on so many levels for me.
Yeah.
And I've enjoyed every second of it, pretty much.
It's been super important as a sort of a guidance system for me. And then there's been, for many years, we organized the Northeast Permaculture Gathering. I think we went for 10 years. And so it was really also about building a network, a lot of the connections with people, really sharing of resources, sharing ideas, sharing our successes and our failures, and really learning from each other has been a super important part of being involved in permaculture.
I really like the way that permaculture forces us to really understand the cultural context for what we're doing. I think that, to me, it's raised a lot of questions. There's a lot of questions in it. I've learned a lot from permaculture in terms of the holistic, looking at all parts, caring about the people, caring about the land, caring about all different aspects of a place, as opposed to just in isolation for production, like in other kind of schools of agriculture. Jana has taught me so much. The Conway schools really pulled permaculture into their curriculum in a wonderful way, and that's where I met Jono. He was a professor at Conway when I did my master's there. And I also learned a lot from people like Leah Penniman and some permaculturists that are really pushing what the identity around permaculture means and helping us to remember that there's so many different perspectives, that we're a multicultural world, and just that, we are living creatures, we're part of this environment, and to make sure that we're respecting everybody else in that sphere in the same way.
It's kind of everything. I experienced the paradigm shift, and I've been teaching for close to 15-ish years, and I don't know if we're attributing this correctly, but Penny Livingston Stark having reframed the idea of permaculture is working with nature rather than against her, to the very potent realization that we are nature working.
Right.
To me, that is the essence, is like embracing our role as keystone species in the ecosystems we inhabit and really trying to do more good. So for me, it's like, we talk about the permaculture goggles. It's like, once they're on, you can't not see things through that lens of opportunity and stacking functions and functional interconnection and all those things. So, it's kind of in one part cosmology, one part livelihood, one part, vision, and I'm infected and I love it,
Yeah.
I think permaculture has really given me the network and the language and the inspiration for launching my professional life. I knew that I wanted the values and ethics and things that I learned in my permaculture design course to be how I made my living. I wanted to live and breathe this every day and be outside. And so I think it really kind of just set the trajectory for me.
Wow. It's been a lot, honestly. It really has infiltrated every part of my life. I not only design landscapes, but I design my lifestyle around the permaculture principles and ethics. For example, we had a shed in my backyard, and I had some friends who needed to move out of a house, and this shed was very much unused. And I said, hey, if you guys help me finish this space, you could live there, for a trade. And so they helped me pack straw in the walls and cob plaster over it and finish the space. And for 2 or 3 years, we traded childcare for rent. So it was no money exchanged, a really nice integrated design of people care, natural building, space use and movement. And so permaculture has really influenced my life in a huge way. And I really am grateful to have found it and utilize the design principles throughout my life.
It's been completely transformative. I mean, I went from thinking about business and the world in a certain way, and kind of overnight, it's just the permaculture goggles get on you, and you know, a lot of us don't necessarily get to implement that, but for some reason, it very quickly came to me how I could make a difference in the permaculture world. So I immediately built a business on it, and I'm happy to say it's taking off really fast.
I went into this PDC, and the instructor gave the prime directive of permaculture to take responsibility for ourselves and for that of our children, and then gave me the 3 ethics, which were the original 3. So take care of the planet, take care of the people, and then limit consumption, redistribute surplus. And I remember having a moment where I'd been seeking a underlying directive for my life for a long time. I'd looked at different religions, I had read the Quran, I had read the Bible. You know, I'd gone through these different iterations and really couldn't find a life ethic that fit with me. And yet here was a beautiful guideline that really was just that. It was a guideline on how to live. It was a guideline on how to be. And so that night when I went to bed, I wrote in my journal, I just said, I'd rather fail at permaculture than succeed at almost anything else. Cool. And so for me, the very first element that permaculture gave me in a positive instead of a negative, because there were some negatives I got originally, was it gave me a direction. It gave me an ethic. It gave me the guidelines in which to direct my life efforts, to give purpose to what I was doing, and to do it in such a way that within the ethics, and this is one of the interesting things about permaculture, is that it has an ethical base, whereas so many of the others do not. Agroforestry has no ethical base.
Right.
Organic certified has no ethical base. Biodynamics has an ethical base, but it also requires you to think of the world as a cosmic repository of energies, which not everybody is ready to do. Right. So permaculture for me gave me a direction, a conversation. It gave me a tribe. It gave me a group of people in which I was able to connect with and relate to. I'm on my 68th or 69th PDC this year, or this month. And when I would start teaching PDCs, I would always say, what brought you to this? And what does success look like at the date that it ended, at the time it ended? And I played along, and I was always saying, I'm here because permaculture for me has brought me to some of the most interesting, fascinating, dynamically enabled and interactive people I've met on the planet. They're not siloed usually, so they're not just one thing. And they have a sense of, how do we better ourselves? How do we better the world?